Okay, let's get into the crux of our show. And this is not going to be the second time we've recorded this because we had a plan. And CrossFit yesterday said, here's that punch in the face. You no longer have a plan. And the penalties, I said, well, I guess we got to redo that. And we wanted to bring in the 4-time defending champion in the 45 to 49-year-old division, our good friend Jason Grubb, to help us work through this, because not only is, Jason has a great perspective on what's going on right now with the penalties, but I also, Jason, wanted to open up by just asking you everything that happened with the Masters leaderboard, where there were some technical glitches there. And I know in an online competition, you can never fully avoid a technical glitch. You were out front talking to people about this. How do you think that whole situation was handled overall?
It was slow on CrossFit's part to address the issue. I think we could all agree on that. The leaderboard scores are due at 7:00. It was documented that the leaderboard will be updated by 8:00. That's my time, so I'm just talking in my own reference. So it's 7:00. I'm submitted. I'm doing some work at my desk here at 8:00. I turn on my camera. I'm doing some behind the scenes of my quarterfinals experience. I'm ready to reveal the leaderboard, and I wait till like 8:15, and I refresh. Nothing. All right. Let's get back to work. I stop the recording. 9:00, nothing. 10:00, nothing. Go to bed. Like any Masters athlete, I get up to pee in the middle of the night, and I take a quick peek, and I expose my face to blue light in the middle of the night, and it refresh. I'm like, ooh, it's 4 a.m, and it's not updated. That's concerning. And then of course 8 a.m, 9 a.m, 10 a.m, and I actually, I've got people messaging me left and right, and people are angry now, a little bit angry that it hasn't been updated. So I don't know why I decide to send a message to Dave Castro just on Instagram, like, hey man, just I think probably an update would be really helpful. Like the optics on this aren't good. And Dave Castro responded immediately, which is always like, whoa, I got a response. Yeah. And it was just very to the point. It's a tech issue. We're working on it. We don't need to make a statement. Of course this looks bad. This is what he said, but that's Dave, right? What do I expect? He is very direct, and he's clearly working. And I within 15 minutes, and this isn't because I made a message, but within 15 minutes, they updated Twitter, they updated the CrossFit Games text, letting everyone know, hey, it's a technical issue. And of course, we all know it's a technical issue. But I mean, I think even before you go to bed last night, just a quick little post on Instagram says, hey guys, we're on it, we're working on it. And my analogy to that is like my power company. Okay. I don't know if you guys, where you live, if you have a choice on power companies, but I don't. I've never lived. That's the power company. It's a monopoly. They just take my money every month regardless. And I hate them so much for that. But when the power goes out, they send a text message saying, hey, we know power's out. We're working on it. We'll give you an ETA. The worst conglomerates in the world can do that. And that's all we needed. Just just a little reassurance. Hey guys, we're on this. Don't worry. We'll get it up. We have no idea what's going on, but we'll get your back. And then I think in retrospect, all is forgiven. Once the leaderboard is up, I almost forgot that happened until you brought it. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. It was delayed, wasn't it? So much has happened since then already. But we have a leaderboard, and just a delay. With Masters athletes, there's this challenge with this being a year where there's a new fresh face to the Masters competition and all of that. And so when our leaderboard doesn't get updated, everyone takes it all personally. Like, CrossFit doesn't care. This is just another way they are deprioritizing Masters. And I think they just had a glitch in the matrix. I mean, what are you going to do? Right. Tech issues happen, and they could have just sent out a quick message like my power company or cable company would do. Other than that, once it's live, it looked good. I was happy with the results. I was like, okay, it's refreshed. This is great. I hope video review holds up. That's a segue, Sean.
Yes, that's
video review. Hopefully, video review holds up.
That was served up on a silver platter. It's like you've done this before. Well, let's talk about that, because, like I said, we were originally going to go through just these top storylines coming out of quarterfinals, and all that got wiped away with these penalties that are resulting from CrossFit looking closely at workout number 1. And Mike Halpin, known and knowable, I believe is his Instagram handle. He has a free link that you can look at, and I can pop this up on the screen right now. There's
more than 64 people with the link opened right now.
Right, like everyone's looking at it. The line I was just going through it because there's a couple names now who have who are on the outside looking in, they were in a qualifying spot, and now they are out of one for semifinals. Paige Powers being the most notable. She dropped 98 spots due to a penalty in workout number 1. That's if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see that highlighted on your screen. She was in 5th and she dropped down to 103rd out because of this penalty. And Sydney Wells is another big name athlete who was in a qualifying spot, Gaines veteran, who is now on the outside. But what do you guys? I mean, this is the only word I can think to describe this as carnage.
Yeah, I mean, before we kind of dive into like the personal opinions, I want to be clear around like this has been something that has been come hand in hand with quarterfinals pretty much since they've been instituted under the newish but constantly changing system. You go back 2022, 2023, we had hundreds of penalties that were applied on the leaderboard during quarterfinals. Now, granted, there was potentially more tests and they were potentially scrutinizing and requesting more videos. So naturally that would be the case. But I do think we do get a little bit of recency bias anytime big names and penalties are involved to be like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. It's never happened before. Or maybe people haven't been punished to this extent. But go back, you can look up quarterfinals penalties CrossFit Games 2022 and the list. I mean, I think I want to say in World 1 of the workout 2, test 2. I know test 1 in 2023 had over 100 penalties alone. And that was one of the multiple tests there. And and now granted, the severity of the penalties might have been a little bit different. There were a lot of minor penalties in those instances, but it's not unusual that we have, the hammer dropping like this.
To me, the bigger question, well, I have a lot of questions, but it's when I look at who's receiving penalties, there are a handful of names that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see receive penalties, like Patrick Vellner. I don't know that I've ever seen his name on a penalty list, and there was a 25 rank difference for him. So to me, that's significant as an athlete who's a veteran in the space that overall I think moves very well. Also, as you mentioned, I think Tia was massively impacted by the penalties. So I think that to me, that's one of the bigger questions. And the other one is a lot of these training camps hired folks from the AFJ. Those are the judges that judge at the CrossFit Games. If they can't get it right for quarterfinals, what does that say about the games? And Jason, I'm curious on your thoughts with that.
Yeah, I mean, I was absolutely shocked when I discovered that they did have those games judges, or that they hired judges to bring in. Like, good on them. I think that's really cool to have a camp where something like that happens, and it elevates the or prioritizes like the importance of quarterfinals, of the qualifiers. Like, they're that big of a deal. It's surprising that athletes got dinged there, but I would say that one of the big differences that I've experienced between live competition, like at the games or at the Legends Championship, big competitions, and qualifiers is, qualifiers, the standards are there. You have to read them. It takes a lot of manual effort to get to know the standards. And every year that I do that, I read it, I highlight, I've got it there with me on paper. This year, one of the guys I train with, he's an attorney. He had a binder, so he'd always just pull out the binder. It's awesome to have an attorney do this. He knows the standards, but we are meticulous on that in that sense, and that should influence our movement patterns in the qualifiers. But at the games, I think one of the reasons why at the games you tend to see no one cutting any corners. They are pretty much very good reps, is that you get this talk before you go out on that competition floor about the standards from the head judge, and they make it dramatically clear what no reps are showing up, and they'll just let you know, like, hey, if your chest isn't getting to the floor on those burpees, you're going to get a no rep, right? You're like, oh, okay, get your chest down. Like, you don't want a no rep at the games. Or if you don't show lockout on the top of that ring muscle up, a lot of people aren't showing lockout. They are very clear on that. So you go out and you execute perfect reps, so you don't lose any reps at the games. Even on the fastest workouts, you see a crispness to the movement patterns if someone can do the movement. in quarterfinals and semifinals, you're racing a clock. It's a virtual competition. You don't know where anyone else is at. And you don't have that someone telling you beforehand, that prejudge it talk that says, hey, this is what CrossFit is going to watch out for. You're probably going to want to watch those step ups. You're probably going to want to make sure that you could get that rower in the video right. Make sure you stand up on snatches, because here's kind of the sticky spots when you don't finish a snatch. For me, I've seen people get dinged, and I've done this long enough in qualifiers that in my mind, I was like, on the step ups, I am going to squeeze my butt at the top of every step up and make it dramatically clear with a hip hop that I am up there. I know how to do these. And I also know that from experience. Last year, Tommy, like you said, last year, quarterfinals, a lot of masters athletes got dinged on these box jumps that we had in one of the quarterfinal workouts. You would get up on that box, and box jumps are notorious penalty creators, because if you don't stand up all the way, it's really clear in a video and you get off. So I was like, oh, step ups, we're going to need to make sure these are super clear. I'm not surprised, with that in mind, that that's one of the workouts that they're really focused on, because you could short box step ups, and in a minute's time, a fight gone bad style workout, you could get a couple of extra reps in there. And it turns out that a couple of extra reps by doing one leg at a time, tapping your foot on top of the box instead of standing up on the box, these little cheat codes turned out to be really, really painful. And it's something you wouldn't see at the games. Again, a big competition, the judge is going to say, hey, some people are just tapping the box on top of that step up, not standing up tall. That is a no rep. You want to not do that. And you don't necessarily have that in quarterfinals. And I don't think it's necessarily CrossFit's responsibility to share every possible way with every single rep that you could try to short a rep. It was clear, stand with your back to the barbell. This is what a snatch looks like, what a box step up should look like at the finish. And it's a huge bummer when you see something afterwards. I had a bunch of people, this last thing I'll say, a bunch of people since this morning, it's a busy morning, send me videos, masters athletes, hey, are my reps good? Are my reps good? And, I've got to respond to some of them saying, there was a couple soft reps in there. I can't, I think, then you would show a really good rep. If you had a soft rep, then you showed a good rep. So you got to be careful. And if someone sends me a video, I'll just be like, hey, this is what I saw. It's a little soft.
So there's two things Tommy, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to jump in there with, but
well, I want to say, like, Jason's point about having that instantaneous feedback as an athlete and that constant, like, almost pruning of movement and adjustments also applies to judges too, right? If you're a judge is out on the floor and maybe a couple of reps that they're focused on one thing, that's where the head judge comes out and makes that adjustment on the fly too. And that like fine tuning throughout live competition as it's happening is also just a gap in what we see between the online competition and live competition. So while, you hired these games judges who do a good job in live competition to refine this, there's also a feedback loop piece that's missing in this process that could potentially, like, cause major issues with penalties. And I think we've seen it a few times already with some of the people that athletes have brought in.
Well, and that's the question I wanted to ask Jason. We were talking about this a little bit before we came on here, but you've never received an online penalty, like a penalty for an online movement?
No, I have not received a penalty online. Not yet. I've refreshed, even while we've been doing the show, I've refreshed the leaderboard multiple times. So far, so good. Let's just knock on wood here. But I've been doing qualifiers since 2016, and I've never received an adjustment.
Okay, so that's like Lauren said. Some of these athletes, I think, well, I had a judge here who said everything was good. That does not take the onus off of the athlete to then go watch that video. Like, you have people sending their videos to you, and make sure, because you're going to catch, it's just like any other sport. You're going to catch things on video that you're not going to see in real time from the angle that you have. It's why there's video review in just about every single professional sport, because they understand that the human element isn't going to account for things that happen almost instantaneously, and you can't make a snap judgment on that. You need to see it slowed down.
And it's also
go ahead.
I was going to also say, it's also very hard to be a judge. Okay, there's professional judges watching some of these athletes, but I would say in the masters community, no one that I know of hired a judge to come, right? We've got, registered judges, but I judged somebody, and it's so hard to give no reps. It's really, really hard. And I always have a very clear talk with my judge in a qualifier. Like, you have to no rep me. I'll give you a high five for every no rep you give me after this is over. Like, watch for the no reps, call them out, make them loud so that I know. And then we both win, because then I'm not going to get hit with a penalty
Mhm.
later. And I don't want to redo this workout. So, look, if I don't touch my hand on the padding on a GHD to start the rep, call the no rep. And I've had no reps happen. I've missed the mark on wall balls, and those no reps, they suck to receive. But as a judge, you have to give those out again, so that I don't have to repeat the workout. That would be probably the worst outcome. I don't want to repeat these. I've given everything, and I don't have time to repeat them. And then two, of course, I don't want to receive something from HQ. That's way more painful than the judge afterwards. And I imagine that some of these judges have got to feel this unique pressure. Like, I am at Mayhem. I'm so honored they hired me to come here. But I got Rich watching me. I've some of the idols of the sport watching me judge Paige Powers, who's a world-class elite athlete. What kind of weird internal dynamics are going on there with that judge? Should they have no repped it? Is it on the judge? It's on everyone. When it comes down to, of course, like you said, it is on the athlete to check their video. Dude, I check my videos. I mean, guys, I have two cameras running at all times. I check both videos to make sure that even my backup video is good, so that I'm not only relying on one video. I'm a little crazy about it, but I think that's how you have to be.
Well, and that's something that everyone wants at all levels of the sport. Everyone wants it to be more professional. But I think a lot of times what's lost in that statement is that also requires an elevated amount of attention that athletes need to pay to what they're doing as well. That's not just CrossFit saying, oh, we're going to offer more money and have better events. It also means when we have these online portions that athletes need to conduct themselves as professionals and do the things, Jason, that you're talking about. And it seems like I would guess that the vast majority of them more or less are doing something like that. Maybe not to the extreme that you're going to,
Yeah.
but
I agree. I think the vast majority are, absolutely. And it's not to say that people are being lazy on this. I've never been in a place where I've done qualifiers where I've seen anybody being flagrant or intentional. But it does come down to, I mean, I was at one of the training camps last year, and I was going head to head actually with another athlete in the 40-year-old age group, and we were doing box jumps in a workout. I was racing him. He kept me going so fast, uncomfortably fast on these box jumps, but it helped my score. He's a tremendous athlete. He's 7 years younger than me. And after it was all said and done, workouts are submitted. He calls me afterwards. He's like, Jason, hey, will you look at your video to check my reps? They're giving me no reps on these box jumps. I check my video and I'm like, oh my God. Oh no, these are no reps. I'm so sorry. These aren't good reps. I didn't see. I couldn't see it in the competition. And when I'm checking the video afterwards, I'm looking at my reps. I'm not looking at the peripheral reps. But I think it is onto the, like you said, it's on the athlete to just double check. It's my responsibility to submit that clean video if I want to move on in a sport that I've been training for. And we take this so seriously throughout the year that it's not worth risking anything to not have an absolutely clean video go to HQ.
Well,
I have a
that's why I think-
question, and maybe this. Sorry, Tommy, you can go first.
Well, I was going
I
to say
can-
that's where I think there's a slight disconnect between how people view that statement that Sean made of we all want it to be more professional, right? I think there is a select few of athletes, and I think you're definitely included in this, Jason, where you want professionalism across the board. You understand what that requires, both from HQ and the administrative part of it, and the responsibility of the athlete to meet them at that level too. But I think because we've had a multitude of slip-ups, whether it's HQ not adhering to their own created deadlines that they set for themselves, and missed schedules and things that are left off, and rule books being amended mid-season, and all of these things. I think what immediately comes to mind for a lot of athletes is like, hey, we want more professionalism from the other side. And then I think we have a tendency to point the finger across the aisle. So you have athletes saying like, yeah, we want it more professional. We're expecting that from HQ. And then you have HQ saying, yeah, we want more professionalism too. And we're expecting it from these athletes. And I think there's a point in time where everyone has to stop and be like, hey, we all have to be professional here. We all have to hold up our end of the bargain. Otherwise, we shouldn't be necessarily throwing stones. That's a really tough gap to bridge when you have a lot of athletes that are not used to operating at that level, or aren't used to getting no reps, or an administrative staff that's being shortened or has cut budgets and things like that, and it gets pinched on all sides, and I think we're seeing the ramification of that right now.
My question, and I'm asking this question not because I have necessarily an opinion one way or another, but how much emphasis are we then putting on quarterfinals? We're essentially asking the athletes to move differently because it's an online stage and because judges have the ability to scroll back, watch again, put in slow motion, compare with lines or whatever, where as in-person competition, once you get to the final two stages, semifinals and the games, these decisions are made on the spot. So essentially, to me, it seems like, and based on the spreadsheet of all the updates Mike Helpin just made, that we're putting all of our eggs in a quarterfinal stage, which is not even in person,
Well,
and a lot of resources.
I mean, I'll. This is my thought. I think that you should always be moving well, regardless if it's online or in person, and everyone is being held to the same set of standards here. It's not like, you know, and when you're live, there is a human element, and that is a part of that. Everyone understands that. Everyone knows that you might get a judge who calls things a little bit differently, but that's why the head judge is there. And how many times have we seen it on the broadcast? Here comes Chuck Carswell. Here comes Adrian Bosman in the background. You're like, yeah, you need to take a look at that, and then that correction is made. But everybody is on that level playing field. And it's the same thing with quarterfinals. It's like you're not putting more emphasis on it. You're putting the right emphasis on it. You're saying this is a standard. You need to adhere to a standard. I'm sorry, my dogs are going nuts. And like if you don't, you're going to get penalized. And that's the way it always should be. You just have more tools to make sure that that's the case in quarterfinals. And it's not like the athletes are going into this blind. They have the ability to watch their videos. They have the ability to go do it again. And the submission windows were even bigger. So you had more time to do that. And so it's not like they just said, you got one shot, you got 10 minutes to do this, send the video in, you don't even have a chance to look at it. And then we are going to take more time that we did not afford you to look at it. So it's like, I think, the emphasis, there's a lot of emphasis being put on it, but everyone has an equal opportunity here to make sure it's right.
But do we think that judges should be able to rewind, slow down, or should they actually have to watch it as if it's live and judge accordingly?
In quarterfinals?
Yeah, instead of taking
but that's what they're doing. But again, in a live competition, no one has the opportunity to do that again. In these online competitions, everyone has multiple days to do the workout, watch the video, sit down with their coaches. Did I do this right? Maybe we should do it again. So everyone still has that opportunity.
Yeah.
Just because you have a live judge, it's like, just because I wore my seatbelt means I'm not going to get in an accident.
Yeah. So I think allow me to paraphrase what you're saying. Like, Sean, is if the judges are given an extra fine tooth comb, the athletes are also given that by the opportunity to review their own video, do it multiple times, have more lenient windows as well. It's almost like we're giving both sides the tools to kind of fine tune a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's,
and to be fair, I would
think
say
that's fair.
Go ahead, Jason.
For the individuals, they have to thread such a tight needle to get to semifinals. With masters, we've got the top 200 going, so there's a little more wiggle room in there, right? And for the individuals, man, it is, those windows are so tight in each region for the right athletes to get in that I'm agreeing, because there's more time, there can be more scrutiny on the judging side of things. Now, I don't know, unless you guys know, actually behind the scenes, do they actually slow down the videos? I mean, they can, but do they?
Yeah.
Right? Who's actually doing this in the background?
I've watched someone go through a video review before, and really what they'll kind of do is they watch it one time through just to get a sense of things. Like, okay, that might not look good. And then I think they make some notes, and then they go back through, and then they look at those notes and they say, okay, this doesn't look good. This doesn't look good. This doesn't look good. Now, if they're getting to the point where they've got to slow it down, they can pause it at a thing like that. I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
But they do look at things multiple times, and then they have someone else look at it. They kick it up the chain. Like, here's what I saw. And then someone else looks at it. So there's multiple sets of eyes, on these. It's not just someone sitting there, shoving popcorn in his face. Yeah, no, what? Distracted. Oh, wait, got to get back to this. Like, they take this very seriously.
And they do. And
I would say one note
about
they're
that meticulous.
Sorry, Jason. I just want to say, people think that elevating up the chain automatically means you're going to get hammered more. I've seen it the other way too, where going up the chain sometimes removes penalties, or like, actually that was close, but someone with a little bit better eye or angle is okay. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that was right. All I was going to say was that you're right about the how detailed they are. You can't be eating popcorn and counting 100 reps on a GHD and giving someone credit for only 49, or 99, because that has happened. I've seen that. Like, I mean, I can't imagine what it'd be like to be watching these videos and counting reps like that. But good on those judges for taking the time to have that level of scrutiny. Take that to count box step ups. I mean, that is arduous work.
Yeah. And, look, we've seen video review at the CrossFit Games before. I mean, it was 2017, right? When Caro Saunders failed to do an exercise, like a certain and cross the finish line, and she's like, I'm done. She's like, my judge told me, and they went back and they had to review it and say, okay, this is how much time it took, and this is what we're going to penalize you. Like, that's, so that's part of it. But I guess the thing that I keep thinking is, imagine if they were looking at every single video. What this?
Well, I know for individuals they've requested 2 at least.
Yep. I heard that too.
So if you want to talk about tediousness, you have 150 burpee box jump overs that you got to review now. And I know how it felt doing that and how pouty that I was, how easily my mind wandered. But that's, and we're still just only seeing the results of the first workout. But that's not the reps being subtracted isn't the only penalties we're seeing. We're seeing people get zeroed out. Multiple people get zeroed out because of the 24-hour video submission rule and people not adhering to that. And that has caused, I would say, in some instances, some pretty devastating effects too. With I think Freya Moosberger and I didn't see Caitlin Van Zyl on the leaderboard too, of people like basically either it got filtered to their spam folder or they didn't even receive the email and it just their score got zeroed out.
Okay. I have thoughts on that, and I'm going to go to Jason on this one. Jason, again, as a competitor, like you want to go to the next stage, that you have got to video all of your workouts. Okay. When you submit your scores, do you submit your videos along with them?
Absolutely.
Why?
Yes. I don't want to miss that email. I don't know. I don't want to leave any stone unturned. I know I've got good videos. I submit them so that they have them. Go ahead. In the past, there's actually been a spot to put notes. And again, this is just me. That's where I've added a second camera. So I upload both cameras always to YouTube. And again, as soon as I'm done with the workout, I'm backing up those videos to YouTube immediately so that if a house burns down, I've got those videos online.
Right.
But there was a year, the first year that I think maybe the first or second year that we did rope climbs in quarterfinals, masters athletes, we had GHDs, pistol squats, and rope climbs. And it was a really tight gym. It was really hard to see the top of the rope. But my GoPro showed a better version of it, but it had a little more fisheye. And I didn't want the fisheye to be an issue. So I recorded both. I submitted my iPhone video. And in the notes section, I included my backup camera in case they had any issues seeing my hand clearly touch above the line. But I submit with it. And Tommy, you mentioned that I just had someone reach out to me that had a teenager that ended up getting a 0 on workout 1 because they don't think they received an email. And I just responded back. I'm like, dude, check your spam folder and just proactively send a video into HQ. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to say, but it's the submission. It's right there. So why not submit it? I mean, unless you're on a time crunch, just submit it.
But how are you on a time crunch with these? That's the thing. It's like they increased the windows here.
Yeah.
But the way that the athletes are using that time is to repeat workouts. And I'm not saying that's good, bad, or indifferent, but I'm saying the reality is that athletes were not using this extra time to make sure that all their T's and I's were crossed and dotted. They were using the time to redo.
Whose fault is that?
Sure.
Right.
I'm not disagreeing.
And look, I am not the guy that you would want to put in charge of these penalties, because if someone said it was in my spam folder, sorry, here it is, I'd be like, oh, you're good, cool, we're fine, right?
Totally.
I'm not but you can't do that here.
Have we gotten an official ruling on the athletes that got their score zeroed because their videos got pulled for copyright music? Because that's another potential
Different
issue.
issue.
Yeah, well, and that's what I'm saying. That's a
I
reason
know that
why
Laurie had one. Let me go to her Instagram.
I
to
know
see if
I
she
know athletes
updated.
that don't submit their videos with their scores. They submit their scores, they have all their videos, and they have them ready and processed to provide without publishing them to potentially have those copyright issues. So it's like I have all my videos ready and sorted to go. I can get them to you immediately once you request them. But I'm not going to go through the potential of YouTube corrupting video or copyright issues or any of the technical aspects that maybe the average gym goer CrossFitter is not going to be super keyed in on. And so you avoid that, but you have your stuff prepared anyways. And that's where I think we saw some of the issues with like the 24-hour rule where, and I actually reached out to the PFAA about this, about whether or not we could get, you think it's a reasonable request to have CrossFit state in the rulebook. Video review will begin immediately upon the conclusion of the time window. So athletes have a reasonable expectation that they can both hold CrossFit to and hold themselves to, because I know from some people that they got their videos reviewed or requested immediately. Some people it's 3 days from down the line. And, you know, I would say even for masters athletes, if you have a full-time job, that's pretty gnarly to be going back and forth. So if CrossFit's like, hey, we're going to start video review here, and the minute emails go out, they put an Instagram post up saying video review requests have started. Takes someone 10 minutes on Canva to make something for that, but that's discounting the quality of graphics people they have there, and I don't want to do that. But and then immediately everyone's like, oh, okay, we know, right?
Mm-hmm.
That just seems like a very easy way to avoid some of these things.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like to Jason's point, you know, Jason uploads all his videos. Why not just do it that way? And again, this isn't a 2-hour window. You have to get all this done. You have days.
Because I think there's variability from people enough to where CrossFit clearly sees it that they don't mandate it. Right?
Yeah, I know that, but if you're told you're expected to have it, and then you don't bring it, and then they ask for it, you were told you were expected to have it.
I think it comes down to the same thing. If you're in a college class and you have somebody who is doing a group project, they work ahead of time, they have everything submitted early, and then you have the person who waits to the deadline. Like if I was the athlete, I would be like Jason. I would have 2 angles. I would upload everything private to YouTube so that when CrossFit asks me for a video, I just go to unlisted, send them the link. I'm refreshing, looking at my spam, looking at my junk, looking at my email. But I know that the majority of people, unfortunately, do not operate like that. So how can we have this balancing act of a little bit of grace for people, but also while making the sport professional? Because if the athletes want the sport to be professional, they have to uphold their end of the bargain as well.
Yeah, but isn't a little bit of grace a bigger submission window?
What?
Isn't a little bit of grace a bigger submission window?
Sure. If you submitted your scores according to what the rulebook sets, that's great. And the rulebook states you don't need your video at that time, and it can be requested of you. It doesn't say when they're going to request it.
Yeah,
it doesn't say like
there's too much room to read between the lines.
No, there's not. I don't think there is. There's a risk of reading between the lines. If you want to read between the lines, that's a risk. There's a way to take no risks here.
Well,
they need to just spoon feed. They need to put clear, specific instructions.
I feel like they are spoon feeding people.
I mean, but how? But here's the thing, and this goes back to my statement earlier. CrossFit itself is not perpetuating an era of professionalism when they set deadlines and schedules for themselves, and they don't adhere to them, right? Mm-hmm. So this is the byproduct of that. You have people looking up and saying, "Well, CrossFit's not doing it. Like, why do I need to do it?"
Well, that's a bad excuse.
It is. I'm not saying it's a great excuse, but if you want to objectively take a step back and be like, "How can we solve this?" Right? Athletes need to take responsibility for how they can best prepare. CrossFit needs to take responsibility for how they can best prepare. And you can't tell me that CrossFit better preparing for these types of scenarios isn't to communicate better. right?
Well, I'm with you on like I think the Instagram post or something like that on social media, like that
Absolutely.
should happen. That should happen.
I
Like
mean,
there's
I mean,
no, why not just do that?
your average your local 5K lets you know when invites are and registration is open and when those things happen. Like a push notification through the app and all those other things is a super easy way to do it. And it's just like
What's
these
that new
little
app
things.
they're using? They could have used it for this.
But it's also it becomes that death by 1,000 cuts, right? Like if this were the first time this was happening, or if this is like, the a situation where it's very uncommon for this gray area and all these back and forths to happen. Like the fact that we're having this discussion means that there are people that are going to look at this scenario and think like, why do I need to put all my effort and cross my T's and dot my I's for an organization that is not going to do it for me in return? And I'm not saying they're correct in thinking that, or that's the best way for them to be successful as an athlete, but that is the environment that you breed in those scenarios.
Okay. I mean, I understand that, but like I said, at the end of the day, you as the athlete are choosing to conduct yourself that way and putting yourself at risk if you're not going to cross all those T's and dot all the lowercase J's. Like it's
For sure. I mean, it's like any team you've been on, right? Like if there's an environment or a non-winning culture set, they're going to be the athletes that instill that culture internally as well, right? But there's also responsibility from the team, from the organization, from the coaches to help support that for the best case scenario of everyone involved going. And I'm not saying it's a one-to-one comparison, but I do think there are parallels between that. And I don't know if it's happening on all fronts. Like we do have athletes like Jason, like I would say Brent and even Pat, forgetting who got dinged a couple times. They put out good movement. They go through all those little things that most people aren't willing to do, and they reap the rewards as a result. I don't think it's insignificant that Jason goes through that detail and is also a multi-time champion and the most successful Masters athlete we've ever seen.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be what it takes and what won't get you there. And I don't know if the space or the sport is in a place where it can continue to not fester in a way where people are pointing across the aisle if everyone doesn't put their hand up and be accountable. That's not just athletes.
Yeah. You know what the solution is? More in-person competition. That's yes,
All
right?
in.
I
All in.
mean,
Certainly helps.
More fun.
Yes, it would. All right. Well, does anyone want to add anything more to this before we put this to bed and go and
when are
continue?
they done with this?
The 29th allegedly is when everything is supposed to be set.
Oh God.
I know.
No
Right?
more days of this.
Well, I mean, it makes for good content. It makes it very interesting.
Mhm.
I'm incredibly sad, honestly, for the athletes that
Yeah.
aren't going to semifinals because of something like this. We've talked about a lot of athlete responsibility in being professionals themselves and dotting their lowercase J's and all that. But I know Paige, and I've trained with her, and she
I
is the
love Paige Power.
sweetest
She's
human being on
awesome.
the planet.
Yeah.
And I just can't imagine what it would be like the knot in your chest to see something like that, and your
Oh.
season is over because of a mistake. I mean, it is a mistake. It's an executional mistake. And it's not because of your training, not because you're not a tremendous athlete, and a mistake in execution, and you're out. I mean, it's brutal. It's real. This is real life, but dang it. And the other thing I was going to say is I did just do a quick check, and I don't have any videos viewed yet as a Masters athlete. So I know there's this priority to get the leaderboard finalized for the individuals. Our semifinals starts in 13 days. So I know that for us, I don't know when our leaderboard is finalized, but there's a time ours happens weeks before the individuals, and I'm not asking for them to prioritize us. It's totally okay. However they get to us, but we'll be refreshing our leaderboard all day long, chewing bandwidth, hitting the website with refreshes. I think the F5 button has been, I think I've worn it out on my keyboard. But anyway, we've got a few more days of this. I think a little bit of uncertainty for all athletes.
Yeah. Well, you brought up something, and I really want to make sure that I make this clear. I don't think anybody who got hit with these penalties was intentionally trying to cheat.
Yeah.
They thought they were moving well, and and unfortunately that was not the case. The other thing I know is, having talked to people who are responsible for adjudicating this process, they take no joy and having to communicate to an athlete and say, hey, sorry, you missed the window, your season's over. They're not sitting there like twirling their mustaches being like, hey, I got another one.
Right.
They don't, this is not fun for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talk about this every year, but assigning like nefarious intent
Correct.
to people is wrong, and I think is not the way to approach it necessarily. But yeah, that's brutal, because I mean, especially for athletes like Paige, we've seen them operate at the highest level.
She had such a great year last year.
Yeah, coming off a top 10 finish at the games. But man, it's tough. Yeah, Jason, I don't know if you heard, your leaderboard finalizes May 1st, by the way.
May 1st. Okay.
Right.
Is that a week before semifinals?
If it's something like it is exactly a week before semifinals.
The first is a Wednesday, next Wednesday.
Yep. Our semifinals come out on Wednesday the 8th. Really quick turnaround.
Jason,
so
go ahead.
We learned. I want to just say to all the Masters athletes that are listening, heading into semifinals, that's where we thread the needle, right? There's not that many. There's more spots than we've ever had to get to the games, but having come from having to be in the top 10 every year for the past however many years, you got to double down on those movement patterns, keeping them super clear, know the standards. If you have questions, ask me, ask somebody, converse with other people to make sure that that's super clear, and make sure those cameras are in the right positions. You just have everything squeaky clean. We also, for semifinals, will have that extended period. We've got that Wednesday through a Monday. So there's plenty of time to do it right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's great, because I was going to ask you what your kind of your parting message to the athletes here was, and you
that's it.
read my mind. So appreciate that.
I have a parting message to consider. Maybe we should have our training sessions judged more frequently, because I do think the disparity amongst what you see in the gym, where it's easy to let a wall ball miss the target here or there, or whatever it may be, happen, and actually like putting yourself into a ring where you have to accept no reps in a way, I think that could break down the barrier between both judge and athlete in your own affiliate. If you're a camp or something like that, that could ultimately help this in the long run too.
Yeah, that's
really
great.
Having a simulation, a few weeks before these qualifiers, doing a simulated weekend where you're actually filming, you're going through the workload of that, because there is a significant workload that comes with setting up your camera, the barbell, everything, measuring everything, warming up, doing the workout. It's very different than your training day. And I've got lots of years of doing this, but I'll tell you, the first quarterfinal, I did event 2 first this year, and I was all nerves. And you know what happens when you're all nerves in a quarterfinal? You go too hot. You start too hot. You're all, I feel great. These burpees feel great. And then I suffered greatly for another 100 burpees, 100. Yeah. Then I got punched in the face because the workload is just so different, and you forget until you're in that. The camera's rolling, judges there, the whole thing. And, but yeah, getting some practice reps, Tommy, like you said, practice reps with someone counting your reps, checking your movement in your own video, practice uploading to YouTube with background music so you can figure out, okay, what happens when I get a copyright claim? Well, 9 times out of 10, it's no big deal. If it's unlisted, it's no problem. But doing some practice reps there, that's for future practice.
Yeah, NFL teams, you do that all the time in training camp. They'll bring in the officials to officiate their scrimmages.
There you go.
So they know, it's all part of it.
And I think, I don't know, and you could maybe speak to this, but whether or not there's a stigma of like how costly 1 or 2 newer reps actually is, right? Like, and if you have like a goal in mind and you're able to fight through a few of those and still get that in those training sessions, then, maybe it's a little bit of an eye opener on that regard too.
For sure. Yeah. Like you said, Jason, no rep me during this, because I don't want CrossFit doing it. Don't want dad coming in, like wait till your
all
father
day long.
Oh God.
Every rep counts. Guys, I'm grateful to be second place, and I'm always competitive. I second is a joy. But I was 2 burpees from first. I was 1 clean and jerk from first. That's how tight this stuff gets. Yeah. And so if I had no reps, or if I would have just worked harder, in every single workout, then I end up on top. Every single one of these reps counts.
And that's where live action also changes the calculus a little bit, because you have no idea where your competition is. You can see where that guy is. You can put like that. It just changes everything. So yeah, I'm glad, second place. That's fantastic. Glad you're moving on. Looking forward to watching you compete the rest of the way. Thanks so much for being here, man. We really appreciate it, and adding that athlete's perspective. And it stinks. Like I hate to see when athletes, because I know how hard they work, to have it come down to a missed email and a failed submission, or you thought you were moving correctly and you weren't. That sucks. I hate that. And I can't imagine what that feeling is like. But rules are rules, and it's like I'm glad I'm not not the guy in charge of this, because there'd be a lot of exceptions being made because that's okay, whatever, you're fine. But we can't do that. We can't do it that way. This is a sport, it's a competition. We're trying to find the winner, and that won't work. So Jason, thanks so much for being here. Thanks everybody for listening and watching. We really appreciate it. Love to get your thoughts on this as well and how we can make this better and move on. But now we'll see how much carnage remains, and then we'll hopefully be talking about semifinals, and we don't have to deal with this stuff anymore. But this is the once a year occurrence of online
chaos.
That's right. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. We appreciate it. For Tommy Marquez, Lauren Khalil, and Jason Grubb, I'm Sean Woodland. Take care of each other. Be better. We'll talk to you guys next time.